Welcome back, Hawaii Real listeners. Today, we're going to get an inside perspective on the recent sentencing of the Kealohas. Catherine Kealoha, the prosecutor, or former prosecutor, and the former chief of police, Louie Kealoha. And this is going to be brought to us by defense attorney and former DPA and former candidate for the prosecutor's office, Megan Cow. Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Io Keehu, and this is Hawaii Real. If you haven't yet, subscribe to this podcast on YouTube, and you can also check out our new website, HawaiiRealPodcast.com. Again, that's HawaiiRealPodcast.com. You can listen in directly to the audio sites, audio episodes directly from the website, and you can catch all the short videos that I post directly on that website. Again, you can find these episodes on Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Google Podcasts. Today, I have back with me again the lovely Megan Cow, former prosecutor candidate and owner of MK Law LLC.
Yes.
She makes me put the LLC on top. Okay. MK Law LLC. Megan, thank you so much for coming on the show again.
Thank you for having me.
Did you have a good vacation?
Oh, it's been great. Ever since November 3rd, man. It's been really great.
But you did stellar in that election.
Thank you.
180,000 around there.
Yeah, around there. I was very happy with the results. You know, before I ran, people told me don't do it. I would be outnamed, outrun, outfunded, and I would lose at the primary and lose big. So, you know, people that supported Steve Alm called me, sat me down for hours, tried to talk me out of it. And I said, have you met me? Once you tell me not to do something, I'm all in. So we did it. And I wouldn't have changed it for anything.
That's interesting. I didn't know that they had sat you down and tried to convince you not to run.
Oh, yeah. Lawyers called me. Lawyers that supported Steve Alm called me to their office, sat me down. One sat me down for 2 hours trying to convince me not to run for prosecutor.
Why? I mean, it just sounds like a bad thing to convince someone not to run.
I mean, I think one of them who I was close to at one point actually was concerned about me losing, and he didn't want me to feel the loss, you know? And I think he cared about how I felt. But the other ones they were just trying to get rid of the competition.
Right. That's what it sounds like.
That's what it was.
That's yuck.
Yeah, it was yuck.
I mean, can you imagine doing that in like sports? Like trying to talk the person out of competing in like a boxing match or MMA match. It's like, yeah, they're going to beat you anyways. Like, dude.
Yeah. The legal profession is a male-dominated profession. You know, there aren't a lot of female trial attorneys. And so I think it kind of was a threat to them. I mean, I have a strong voice. I'm loud. So I think they wanted to, you know, suppress my voice.
Yuck.
Yeah.
Poo on them.
Yeah.
Because he got more votes than a lot of prior elections where the prosecutors were running.
I got more votes than any prosecutor has ever gotten other than Steve Alm. Yeah.
Funny how that happened. Some people got more votes than ever this election and they still lost.
Yeah.
Won't get into that. Anyway. But no, I mean, the whole mail-in vote thing, you know, a lot more people just showed up and voted and sent in ballots and stuff like that. So, yeah. But it seemed like the percentages kind of didn't change.
I think it was a good election overall. People became more interested.
Yeah.
I've helped other candidates run for the prosecuting attorney position, and people never really cared about the prosecutor. They didn't even know they could vote for the prosecutor. They didn't know what the prosecutor did. This election season was all about educating the public, explaining to them the justice system, you know, sitting down and having a lawyer for them to talk to and ask questions without feeling inhibited, you know, like, so I think that's why we did really well. We reached a lot of people.
You definitely did, especially with like your Facebook live videos that you guys did.
Yeah.
That was good. That was really good. And you teamed up with Stolen Stuff Hawaii a few times.
Yeah, I did. And Stolen Stuff Hawaii had actually offered that to a number of, or all the other candidates, just nobody took them up on that. So, you know, at one point we had 30,000 views on our Facebook live events. And I think the majority of those came from the Stolen Stuff Hawaii group.
It's like, why wouldn't they other candidates take advantage of that? I don't know.
I don't know. Everyone has their own interests and agenda. I was just trying to educate people.
And that's good. That's a good thing. And I think, more politicians and more, especially attorneys and, prosecutors now, they should do that. Having a more educated populace it's only better.
I agree. But some people are not tech savvy. Some people don't like to answer their phones, don't like to talk with people. I mean, so I guess that's just my nature. I'm always answering my phone. I'm always answering questions on Facebook or Instagram. So it's kind of automatic for me. But I guess not everybody likes to do that kind of stuff.
Are you going to continue to do that kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah.
Good.
I haven't done anything yet, but if there's an interest, I would do it. I don't know if anyone wants to hear from me now that I'm not a candidate. I don't know.
Well, there is a little bit of interest. We just heard a couple days ago that the Kealohas, Kat and Louie, were sentenced. Kat Kealoha to 13 years and Louie, the former police chief, to 7 years.
Yeah. So let me say something about that sentencing, because people are like, oh my God, how come she only got 13 years? It's not how come she only got 13 years. In the federal system, we have the sentencing guidelines. And so those guidelines recommend to the judge what the sentence should be. And never in my career have I ever seen a judge go above the guideline range. But in this case, Judge Seabright did just that. He gave over the guideline range.
Wow, I didn't know
So
that.
People are like, how come she never get 20 years? It's because the guideline range only put her at 151 months. Judge Seabright put her at 153 months, which, although it's only slightly above the guideline range, it's unheard of in Hawaii.
Well, it's still 13 years out of your life. That's a good chunk of time, especially, she's not old, but she's up there. When she comes out, she's going to be, 13 years, she's done a year and a half or so.
She'll be about 64 when she gets out.
That's insane. That's a huge chunk of your life.
It is.
Taken out. It's I'm sorry, 13 years in prison, that's a long time. 20 years in prison is, you're just adding, an extra 6-7 years, but still, 13 is nothing to scoff at. 7 years even, that's nothing to scoff at. That's a good chunk of time. What can you do in 7 years? Or what can you imagine, people, what you were doing 7 years ago? 13 years ago, we didn't have cell phones, not cell phone, smartphones.
Yeah.
That was before the iPhone. And look how far we've come from that one technology. That's 13 years.
Yeah.
Look at where we'll be when she gets out, what kind of phones we'll have.
I think both sentences were appropriate.
Yeah. I agree. For the things that they did, that's definitely nothing to scoff at. 7 years and 13 years. So.
Yeah.
So what's the backstory on that? You have some personal insight on that.
Man, that was a long time coming. And so I've been dealing with Catherine Kealoha since 2006. That's immediately when I started at the prosecutor's office. She was changing files, telling supervisors lies about me. All kinds of stuff. And I hadn't even met her in person. So I was trying to tell my supervisors, I was brand new. When you come in as a new deputy against this person who has 20 years experience and rapport with all of the supervisors and the head prosecutors, you have a very small, quiet voice. So you say something, but you lack credibility. So I was trying to tell my supervisors, listen, this person, Catherine Kealoha, is lying. She's making things up, but no one would listen. That went on until 2010 when I finally quit. Because in 2006, she was only there for a couple months. She left. When Keith Kaneshiro came back in 2010, he brought her in as a supervisor, and she was my supervisor. She continued to do those things. And so I had to go to another supervisor and say, hey, listen, this is what's going on. She's changing files. She's taking things. She's lying. And so that supervisor actually believed me, but then she quit. And I was like, what am I going to do? So within 3 months of Keith Kaneshiro being in that office.
Oh, your supervisor quit?
Yeah, the supervisor quit. And Catherine became my direct supervisor, and I didn't have any buffer. So I had to quit. I left that office. That's exactly why I left, because of Keith Kaneshiro and Catherine Kealoha. So I had known already for years that she was doing all of this, but she had such a great rapport. And if you talk to anyone that has met Catherine Kealoha in their life, they just think she's the most honest, trustworthy, straight shooter. I mean, they just think the world of her. This chick could sit down and convince you that the sky is green, and you will walk around for the rest of your life telling everybody else the sky is green. And you would say, this is why I believe. And you would try to convince everyone in your life. I mean, she's that good. If you've never met her, you really don't know what a sociopath is. That's exactly what she is. So then around 2012, Gerard Puana and Florence Puana, uncle and grandmother to Catherine Kealoha, filed a civil suit against Catherine Kealoha because she had used grandma's reverse mortgage and taken the money. She was the attorney of fact. She was the trust attorney. She set everything up. And she said, yeah, grandma, don't worry. I'm going to get you all this money. I'm going to pay off your mortgage. Well, she got that money and then kept it for herself. And so grandma was left with nothing else to do but file a lawsuit. So they went to trial in 2012 or 13. I can't remember. It was a jury trial. You know, not every lawyer does trials. There are trial attorneys, there are litigators, and there are transactional attorneys. So not every lawyer does all of those things. And grandma's lawyer was not really a trial attorney. And Catherine had filed a counterclaim against grandma and uncle, saying that grandma and uncle actually owed her a bunch of money. And she got up there and convinced all 12 of those jurors. In fact, in civil cases, it doesn't need to be majority. It doesn't need to be unanimous. It just has to be a majority. She convinced all of them. They were up there tearing while she testified. I'm not joking. I sat there and watched it. The jurors just loved her. And so they found in favor of Catherine Kealoha. They found against grandma and uncle. And they said, you, grandma and uncle, owe Catherine Kealoha hundreds of thousands of dollars for stealing money from her. So that's what started all of this.
Was the evidence not compelling enough? You know, paperwork, bank statements, transactional checks.
Grandma and uncle's lawyer wasn't in his area.
Got it.
I mean, he couldn't explain why documents looked different. He couldn't explain the fraud. He didn't bring it out. Catherine Kealoha's lawyers had her helping them on their side. So they presented evidence that was false, and that was found to be true in the criminal case. So she put forth falsified documents in the civil trial. And again, she testified, and she's very, very convincing. So in the midst of that trial, though, before it actually went to trial, Catherine Kealoha was a supervisor at the prosecutor's office. And, you know, believe me, I've lost friends because of Catherine Kealoha. My very, very good friend, we were joined at the hips together at the prosecutor's office. He went, you know, she came to him and said, I need you to go find a reason to arrest Gerard Puana. And this is before the civil case starts, right?
That's insane.
Yes. And he says, okay.
That's insane too.
I know. I mean, she could make people do things that you couldn't. She's a sociopath. I don't know how else to explain it. So this person, who was my very good friend, very good guy, very honest, very good lawyer, goes and finds a basis to arrest Gerard Puana. And they try to. Good thing, though, the court says, no, I'm not going to accept this as a basis. So what they were trying to do is they were trying to take away his deferral of acceptance of guilty plea, which is commonly referred to as a DAG. It's a plea that allows people to be on supervision for X amount of years. And at the end of the probation, if they've done everything they're supposed to, the case gets dismissed and you can expunge your record. So Gerard Puana was on DAG status. So this deputy prosecuting attorney went and filed a motion to take away the DAG status, even though Gerard didn't do anything wrong, just because Catherine Kealoha asked this deputy to do it. So that's what started this. Then, also while all of this was going on, the Adam Wong incident happened.
What is that?
So Adam Wong was an electrician who was working on a house, and Catherine had some type of interest in a solar panel company. And they were running this project, and this kid, Adam Wong, who really didn't have any relation to Catherine Kealoha, was working on the house. He mentioned that he had gotten a speeding ticket, and she's like, oh, don't worry, I'll take care of it, because she is still the supervisor in the career criminal division, which is pretty much the highest division at the prosecutor's office. So she goes to court and dismisses the ticket, and she lies to the judge, and she just says, oh, judge, we're working on something, you know, he's going to he's going to cooperate with the government, so we're moving to dismiss the ticket. And she went into district court on her own, lied to the judge, and got the case dismissed. That is unheard of. The poor deputy prosecuting attorney sitting there probably should have gone to the supervisor and said, oh, Miss Kealoha just came and did this. Is this normal? Because this is very unheard of.
Right. She's not a traffic attorney at that time. She's above that.
Way above
that.
Highest level at the prosecutor's office. And we're talking about district court traffic cases, right? So the media gets a hold of that. And when Catherine Kealoha got caught basically getting rid of this ticket for Adam Wong.
Right, I remember that in the news.
Yeah, she had to about face and do something to cover that up so that no one would know that that's what she was doing. So she goes and tells Keith Kanashiro that police officers are giving ghost tickets. So what she says is that police officers are writing tickets to fake people just so that they can go to court to get overtime. So now she starts investigating the police officer that issued the ticket to Adam Wong, in spite of the fact that the police officer was actually doing his job and didn't write a ghost ticket. And we know that it's not a ghost ticket because Adam Wong came forward and said, I got a ticket. Catherine Kealoha got it dismissed for me. Despite that statement, Keith Kanashiro assigns his first deputy to run an investigative grand jury, which is not authorized in Honolulu, Hawaii. And they do it anyways, to investigate this poor police officer who really did nothing wrong but issued a ticket.
So what is an investigative grand jury?
There is no authority or law that allows the city prosecutor in Honolulu to convene an investigative grand jury. But Keith Kanashiro has done it ever since his first term. And so because no one's ever called him out on it, he continues to do it. And what he does is he brings in evidence to investigate somebody so that he can try to later charge that person. So what they were doing is they were running this investigative grand jury against the police officer, subpoenaing people that he had issued tickets to over the past 10 years and trying to find out if there were these ghost tickets. And so the first deputy was told, I told the first deputy, I'll be clear. I told the first deputy, I said, listen, you guys don't have the authority to do this. You can't. The police officer hired me because he knew this was going on. I told the first deputy at the time, you guys don't have the authority to do this. You need to stop. There's no basis for a ghost ticket. You need to go to Adam Wong, ask him if he was actually issued a ticket to confirm that the officer gave a legitimate ticket.
So they had a grand jury just for this?
Just for this.
Okay, that's not good. So just for our listeners who don't know necessarily what grand juries do here in Hawaii, they basically take in the evidence, or they're presented evidence by the prosecutors and the witnesses, and then at that time they make a determination of whether or not to charge a person.
Right. So
they're not investigating. The investigation needs to be done prior to that.
Absolutely correct. Yeah. So to be clear, HPD does the investigation. They bring the case to the prosecutor's office. The prosecutor goes to the grand jury and provides evidence, testimony, documents, videos, and the grand jury determines if there's probable cause to believe if a crime has been committed. Probable cause is a very low standard. It's just, does the reasonable person believe that a crime was committed? So if the grand jury believes that probable cause has been proven, then they charge the person. Now the person, even though he's been arrested, is now charged for the crime. And that's the official charging capacity, the indictment. Mm-hmm. That's what a grand jury is supposed to do in Honolulu. Other states do have investigatory grand juries, but we in Honolulu don't have that. So despite the fact that this officer had given a legitimate ticket, despite the fact that Honolulu doesn't have the authority to run these investigative grand juries, this is what the prosecutor's office was doing for years. And so I went and told the first deputy, you don't have the authority to do this. This is a legitimate ticket. Just go to Adam Wong and ask him. even though the first deputy had that information, he continued to run this illegal grand jury. And that's part of why he got a target letter from the federal government investigating him. Or subject letter. I'm sorry, he got a subject letter, not a target letter. So eventually the grand jury goes nowhere. And the civil case goes to trial. And the civil jury finds that Catherine Kealoha wins, basically, and grandma and uncle are supposed to give her money. Then what happens is Gerard Puana gets arrested because during all of this, what Catherine Kealoha is doing is using HPD resources to set Gerard Puana up for stealing the mailbox.
Right.
And the reason why she had to do that is because the deputy prosecuting attorney that I told you was trying to arrest Gerard Puana. That didn't work. The court said, no, I'm not going to.
So they look for something else to arrest him on.
So Catherine Kealoha had to look for something else to set Gerard Puana up for. So she says, oh, I'm going to have him steal a mailbox. So this is what some people may or may not find this funny, but Catherine Kealoha is a state attorney. She is not a federal attorney. She rarely practices law in federal court. Mm-hmm. In state court, if you steal something, well, at that time, if you stole something more than $300, it becomes a felony. Right? Mm-hmm. If you steal something less than $300, it's only a misdemeanor or a petty misdemeanor. So the problem Catherine Kealoha had is she had to have Gerard Puana stealing something more than $300 because she wanted him busted for a felony. What she didn't realize is if he stole the mailbox, it now becomes a federal crime and the federal assistant United States attorney takes over instead of the deputy prosecuting attorney in the city and county of Honolulu.
How did she not put that together? I thought that was kind of common knowledge that if you steal mail or a mailbox, no matter if it's a U.S. Postal Service box or if it's a home's mailbox, that's federal property or it's, federal jurisdiction.
I don't think it came across her mind. I think she thought, I'll just have him steal something. It was easy to set the person up because it's outside. They have these cameras. The cameras are not that good. So we can set him up by just stealing this mailbox. And they did have an expensive mailbox. So she was just like, oh, I'm just going to make that thing over 300. She definitely didn't think forward to think that the feds would take over. She thought it would stay in state court and she would have control over any prosecutor that took over the case because she's a supervisor in the prosecutor's office. So she didn't think that forward.
And it's like, who steals mailboxes? Ever? Like, has there ever... I don't know if there's ever been... And I experienced a case of someone stealing a mailbox prior to that.
The federal agent that handled the case specifically said, I've never in my whole career ever seen anybody steal a mailbox.
Yeah. I mean, those blue bin mailboxes, those have been taken and harvested from there for
fraud stuff.
For fraud stuff, yeah. But a person's personal mailbox in the middle of the night being stolen, never.
Then she had to make up this whole lie about, the reason why Gerard Puana stole my mailbox is because he knew that my bank statements were going to be in there because during our deposition, we had indicated that I was about to get my statements. And so he went that night because he knew that the statements were going to be there the next day. I mean, she had to go all out, right?
That's stupid. I'm sorry. You're going to commit crime, man. Put a little forethought, or a little better forethought, or don't and get caught. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you for getting caught.
So now we're in the midst of the first criminal case, and this is the United States versus Gerard Puana. And he's in custody, mind you. I don't think people really understand that you are innocent unless and until the government can prove that you're guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So that means before your trial starts, you are assumed to be completely innocent. Not you might have done it, maybe you did it. You have to be presumed innocent, okay? Now, here's Gerard Puana sitting in a jail cell, didn't do nothing wrong, right? We all know, everyone in the whole entire world now knows that he was set up. There's zero chance that he did this, right? And he goes and he tells his public defender, Ali Silver, I was framed by the chief of police and his deputy prosecuting attorney, Catherine Kealoha. And, as defense attorneys, we're so jaded. If anyone came to me, I'd be like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I've heard that one before.
Yeah. The chief of police and his high-ranking deputy prosecuting attorney wife set you up. Okay. That I'm like, so you want to plead guilty? So
But then he probably just said, who steals a mailbox in the middle of the night?
And that's what his lawyer was thinking. Why would anyone set you up for stealing a mailbox? All of this doesn't make sense. But he started digging. He ordered the same mailbox. He measured the mailboxes. He did thorough investigation.
His own. Good
yes.
for him.
So he also ordered Catherine Kealoha's medical records, employment records, notes from the civil case. I mean, this defense attorney did his job, right? So we start the first day of testimony in this case. And again, this is the United States versus Gerard Puana. So the first person the government calls to testify, Louie Kealoha. So Louie Kealoha gets up there. He testifies for about an hour. And we all know Catherine Kealoha is coming up next. And when she gets up there, the defense attorney is going to grill her on her medical records, her employment records, all the lies that she's told, all the fraud that she's committed. So you know what Louie does? Mistries the case. So Louie testifies to something that was excluded from the court. The court told him specifically, you cannot testify about this.
And he did it anyways.
Did it anyways.
So in your opinion, was that intentional?
Oh, we all know it's intentional. Even Judge Kobayashi knows it was intentional. We all know. So she had to declare a mistrial. So the case gets put on hold, right? Because we have to start a new trial again, right? We can't just start the next day. We have to summons people. We have to prepare for the jury. So in the meanwhile, now that we know that Louie Kealoha did this on purpose, Ali Silvert, who is Gerard Puana's defense attorney, goes to the FBI and says, I have all this evidence showing that they set him up. This guy is not lying. These two people tried to take away his civil liberties and try to set him up for this crime. So the FBI starts to investigate. Eventually, they dismiss Gerard Puana's criminal case because they find that, yes, in fact, these two set this person up. So years go by, right? Now Michael Wheat, the assistant United States attorney from San Diego, gets assigned the case because we can't have anyone here investigating them. They're so high ranking. There cannot be any appearance of impropriety. We need someone from the outside to come in and start investigating.
Makes sense.
So he comes from San Diego and he starts questioning everybody. I met with them multiple times, gave them background evidence, talked to them about relationships. I basically gave them the background and the environment in our legal system in Honolulu. They start investigating the deputy prosecutor that tried to have Gerard Puana arrested. They interview everybody, right? So they do a thorough investigation, and that's how Catherine Kealoha and Louie Kealoha get charged.
That's pretty much, that kind of wraps it up right there. It's like it's a huge story, and then boom, FBI get involved, and
yes.
Boom.
But here's this is the unfortunate part about this. In order to get people to testify against Catherine Kealoha, the assistant United States attorney, Michael Wheat, had to basically threaten her family members. So what happened was Catherine Kealoha stole money from two children. They're two kids, her niece and nephew. Their father had died and he had a medical malpractice claim. He got paid hundreds of thousands of dollars and it was held in trust for the kids. And Catherine was stealing that money. And instead of having the kids go and tell the truth that they never received any money, they went in front of the grand jury and lied because she coerced them to do it. She said, if you don't lie, I'm going to go after your mom. And so...
how do we know that she said that?
Because
they came out and testified to that?
They came out and testified to it. So what happened was the boy, her nephew, goes and testifies and says, yeah, we got the money. Auntie Kat didn't do anything wrong. Mm-hmm. We spent the money. Initially, that's what happened. Then the federal government came to him and said, listen, we know you didn't get the money because we have all of Catherine Kealoha's bank accounts. We know you lied to the grand jury. We're now going to charge you for obstruction of justice. So he gets charged. He hires Michael Green. They go in, they tell the truth, and he says, yes, this is what happened. She came to me very early on. She said, I have to lie. Otherwise, she's going to go after my mom. I didn't know what to do. So I lied. So he ends up pleading guilty to obstruction of justice because they've charged him. Now he becomes a government's witness because he's been convicted. I mean, the government had to go through all of this just to get this kid to flip on Catherine Kealoha, because that's how much he either was scared or loved her. I don't know which one it was, So that's witness number one. Witness number two is Jesse Ebersol, right? The firefighter from the Big Island. Everybody always talks about him, the kind of good looking guy that she was having this affair with.
I don't talk about him.
The public loves to talk about Jesse Ebersol. Okay. So he's witness number two. So initially she coaches him and she says, don't say anything about our relationship. We don't have a romantic relationship. Tell them that I don't spend any money on you. So he goes and lies to the grand jury as well. He knows he's lying, right? She gets him to do this. He says, we don't have a romantic relationship. She's never bought me anything. She's never given me money. So the feds call him in and they say, we're going to now charge you with obstruction of justice.
I mean, how do they know he's lying?
Because they have all her bank records, which shows checks for $7,000 to Jesse Ebersol.
Oh, so she's paying him direct.
Oh, directly.
Oh.
2 tickets on Hawaiian Airlines.
Kind of hard to dismiss that.
Hotel rooms under her name with him and her staying in the hotel room.
It's not like she was just buying him like trinkets and stuff and clothes and stuff that they couldn't match. She's actually writing him checks.
Money.
That's hard to dispute. Sorry.
Very difficult.
Why would you testify that you don't get money when there's checks written into your bank account? Like, you can't hide that.
That is how good Catherine Kealoha is.
They just subpoena your bank records and they're going to find it.
She would get these people in her web and just dictate to them what to do. And they would just do it. Look at that deputy prosecuting attorney who was going to arrest someone with no basis. How can you do that as a lawyer? It's disgusting. You can't do it. She's got a web around people. Sociopath. That's all I can say.
Yeah, but to be able to convince people to do stuff like that and say stuff like that, I mean, it's got to take some talent.
She's got talent.
Yeah.
That's clear. She's got talent. So now Jesse is charged by the federal government and he has to get his own lawyer. So Catherine Kealoha had set up for her friend to be the lawyer for her niece and nephew and for Jesse Ebersol. So that's why they thought they were in good hands. They had a lawyer, right? But that lawyer was not looking out for their best interest. He was working on behalf of Catherine Kealoha. So now Jesse has to get a real lawyer, right? And the real lawyer says, well, either you admit what you've done or we go to trial and fight all of this. And he says very quickly, I'll just admit it. She told me to lie. She told me what to say. She told me it would be hidden.
So what is the significance of Jesse receiving money from her?
That is all the money that she stole from the 2 kids.
She was funneling it to him?
She was funneling the money from grandma's reverse mortgage, and from the 2 kids' trust. So they were tracing the money, right?
So it went from the trust to her account to his account?
Yes, exactly. That's
not a good laundering process, guys. Got to do better than that.
Or don't launder money at all.
Or don't launder money. I don't even know if that's considered laundering.
It is.
So weak.
Ozark is an example. Anytime you change illegal money into legal money, that's laundering, everybody. Just a tip for everybody.
Well, what I mean is, like, it doesn't even look like it was changed into legal money. If it's going from illegal account or account to another bank account illegally, and then that account directly to another account.
Let's say I sell a bunch of drugs and I make $1 million and I buy a house.
Yep.
That's laundering.
Good to know. All right, so that's money laundering for you. So you're saying there's one more aspect to this whole charade, debacle thing, investigation, whatever people want to call it.
Yeah. So in addition to setting up innocent people to put in prison, stealing money from family members, and laundering money, the Kealohas were also dealing drugs.
That came out in the news too, and everybody was like, oh, it's just like medicine and stuff like that, but it wasn't necessarily. So
let's see, where should I start? In the midst of the federal investigation, the federal agents realized that Catherine Kealoha was helping Rudy Puana. Rudy Puana is Catherine Kealoha's brother. Rudy Puana is a doctor who specializes in pain management. And what was happening was Rudy Puana was giving oxycodone and fentanyl to dealers on the street, and they were selling that. And so
was he he wasn't a pharmacist.
He's a doctor.
He's a doctor.
He's a MD.
So how is he getting access to?
Writing prescriptions.
And then picking it up himself, or writing prescriptions to people?
Writing prescriptions to people.
Okay.
They would go pick it up, and then they would sell it.
Got it.
So this was happening on the Big Island and Oahu.
And are they funneling money to him for the prescriptions?
Right.
Is that
So they're paying him.
thing? Okay.
Yeah. So what brought the feds' attention to this was Alan On and Tiffany Masunaga. Alan On was an HPD officer who hooked up with Tiffany Masunaga, and they started dealing Oxycontin, oxycodone, and fentanyl from this place, a house. So what happened was Catherine Kealoha knew that the search warrant was going to be issued to investigate that house, and she wrote the search warrants to keep the fentanyl out of the investigation, because fentanyl is bad, pretty bad.
Why is she writing the search warrant, or is she involved in the approval of the search warrant? The search warrants are supposed to be written by the law enforcement, specifically, right? Not necessarily the prosecutors.
So she took over that investigation, which already is a conflict of interest because Rudy Puana is the source of the drugs,
and she's related to him,
and she's the sister. So she should have been recused from this completely. In fact, the whole office should have been. This should never have gone through the Honolulu prosecutor's office. If they knew that Rudy Puana was somewhat of a target, because she's so high ranking, it should have been given to the Attorney General's office. But no one in that office knew that Rudy Puana was a target and that Rudy Puana was Catherine Kealoha's brother. Mm-hmm. And of course, she wasn't going to disclose it. So they execute a search warrant. The fentanyl is pushed to the side. Tiffany Masunaga and Alan On get charged. Alan On immediately pleads guilty. He does his time. He does his supervision. He's POW already. So, but in the meanwhile, Tiffany Masunaga is fighting everything. She goes through a couple of lawyers, one of whom sits her down with Catherine Kealoha, because he also represents Catherine Kealoha. So there's the three of them sitting in a room talking about how they're going to get Tiffany's cases dismissed, and how they're going to, because now Catherine's being investigated. So the feds know she's doing stuff. Tiffany Masunaga's case has been charged, and then this one lawyer is representing both of them. So they're all sitting around in a group talking, which is highly illegal. I mean, just improper, illegal, not allowed, and yet it's being done. So someone records this conversation, and it goes into the discovery file for Tiffany Masunaga. Then I file a motion to recuse the government in a number of cases relating to Catherine Kealoha. So I'm the defense attorney on Albert Lee's case, and I start subpoenaing Catherine Kealoha's records. So I'm telling the government, you guys need to recuse yourself. Prosecutor's office says, no, we've done nothing wrong. We're not going to recuse ourselves. And I'm like, recuse yourself. And they won't do it. So I start
asking. Do they know why you're telling them to recuse?
Absolutely.
They're just refusing?
Absolutely. So this goes into another case, Albert Lee's case. So Albert Lee, in 2017, ran into the Hiko shed in Hawaii at 3 a.m. on November 17th. And at 3 p.m., was testifying against Catherine Kealoha in the federal case. And so her division should have completely been recused from his case, yet she's the one who took the case and decided what to charge. Her division, her deputy. And I was saying from the very beginning, before he was charged, you guys have to recuse yourself. He went to go testify against Catherine Kealoha. This is retribution. Keith Kaneshiro said, no, we're staying on the case. For a year and a half. Finally, after I get the judge involved and we subpoena all of these records, Dwight Nadamoto, now acting prosecutor, says, okay, we're going to recuse ourselves. They also recuse themselves from Tiffany Masunaga's case, and they hand over the files to the Attorney General. Now, here's a problem, because the Attorney General gets the files, but they don't have everything. The prosecutor's office won't give them the recorded interview between the lawyer, Catherine Kealoha, and Tiffany Masunaga. So now the Attorney General's office starts subpoenaing deputy prosecuting attorneys to come to court to give the file over. And so this is a very big deal because now we have two law enforcement offices fighting against one another when they should be working together. But the prosecutor's office is trying to hide evidence. So the Attorney General's office has to subpoena everybody and say, where's the rest of the file? I still don't even think they've given the file over completely, even today. And now we're talking about 3 years later. So now we have outstanding, because in the federal case, Catherine Kealoha went to trial with Louie and the three officers, two of whom were found guilty. They've been sentenced. And in the meanwhile, she and Louie pled guilty to the other crimes, right? In addition to that, we have Rudy Puana's drug case, which I was explaining to you, the fentanyl. So that's actually set to go to trial next year. And Catherine Kealoha had the opportunity to either cooperate against her brother or not. I'm assuming she didn't, which is why her brother's asking for trial.
Ties it all in together.
It does.
And it kind of also makes, so that's one of the reasons why you started to run for the prosecutor.
That's
right.
That is exactly why I ran. I was put in the middle of all of this, not on purpose, just because I represented Albert. I represented the police officer who was getting investigated. I knew the background story about Adam Wong. I just happened to have all this information. I didn't go out and look for it. I just happened to be in this position. And so because I had been cooperating with the federal government, giving them background information, I felt like I had to stand up for our community and fight against all of this corruption. That's one of the main reasons why I chose to run.
And it's a good reason to get into politics, to stifle and try to end any kind of corruption that's going on.
Yeah.
And Hawaii, it seems, there's evidence that it's rife with corruption at different levels. So.
Yeah, we're a small community, so people know each other, but once you start using that relationship to gain some type of benefit that you wouldn't have gotten, now we're talking about corruption.
It's not good. Not good. So going forward, what else is going to be on your plate going forward just as a defense attorney?
Well, my practice has been booming since I started running. I mean, that was kind of a side thing. I really didn't even think about that when I decided to run. It was more of the corruption and more of helping the deputies that were in the office that needed real leadership. And, I can work 16, 17-hour days where I could before I started running. And so I had a lot of energy to put into the office. So that's why I decided to run. But my life has changed a lot since this election. And my practice has become extremely busy. I've had to hire another lawyer.
Yeah, I was just going to ask, how many more have you hired, and are you expanding?
We're definitely expanding. We've had to upgrade our software. My phone doesn't stop ringing. And a lot of the times it's just people need help. And I've said this many times on news interviews. Lawyers are expensive. And if I can talk to someone for even half an hour or an hour to explain the justice system so that they can make a well-informed decision, then I'm happy to do that, because it's hard to pay someone $350 to $500 an hour to represent you. I require $50,000, $75,000 retainers. So if someone needs help, I answer my phone and I help them, If they need to retain me, and we make a conscious decision to bring forth a lawsuit, then yeah, you have to pay. But if I can just help people throughout the day, then everybody wins, So, people have asked me, am I going to run again? I was in a very good position last year and this year to run, but I don't think I could walk away from my practice again. It was a really difficult decision to make even last year. Going forward 4 years, I don't think I could do it.
Will it depend on the changes made at the prosecutor's office going forward in the next 4 years? No, not at all.
No, honestly, I someone else will have to step up to the plate. Running for an elected position is extremely difficult. You give up your entire life. I lost friends that I had been friends with for 25 years, people that you thought would be next to you doing this great thing in your life, dropped out of my life completely. I lost, very good friends, close friends, family members. I also gained which is great also. I had a guy threatening to kill me. I had to, instead of keep my handgun in my safe, I brought a safe that I could put on my bed because he was threatening to kill me. You know, people dig into your past. I had an ex-boyfriend who was abusive, and so people dug him out and, you know, started trying to create all this commotion about it and try to use it against me. So I don't think people really know how difficult it is to run for an elected position.
Yeah, because your whole backstory comes out.
Everything.
And yeah, your life is put under a microscope.
Everything. And yet you have to maintain your composure, respond to things appropriately, be in the public eye, you know. So although it was probably the greatest experience of my life, I don't see myself doing it again.
We can definitely notch that up to, you know, experience. And
yeah,
I think that's one of the things that's now under your belt.
Yeah. And I got to educate the public, help the public. I've helped a lot of people who wouldn't have known where to turn, but for my election and my Facebook Live events. So, you know, that's gratifying.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that a lot of people like about you is that you're very helpful and very forthcoming. I mean, I could just invite you on the podcast. And you're like, yeah, sure, I'll come. Yeah, let's set a date and let's do it. You know, and I'll come and talk about whatever. You know, that's great.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
It's been enlightening. I think that a lot of people here in Hawaii who have heard about the Kealoha case don't necessarily know the intricates and the details and stuff like that. They just kind of know the broad headlines and stuff like that. It's like, oh, okay, they got convicted. You know, why? It's like, this kind of sheds a lot of light on why.
Yeah, there was a lot going on. And people are so concerned about the prosecutor's office and it happening again. I saw that Civil Beat article over the weekend. You know, the prosecutor's office hasn't made many changes, but people have to understand this is an aberration. This is not something that happens on a normal basis. Catherine Kealoha is, and not in a good way, a dime a dozen. I mean, not a dime a dozen. She is extraordinary. I mean,
she's one of those outliers.
And I don't say that in a positive way. It's very negative, but there are not a lot of people like her. There are not a lot of people that have that conniving, manipulative attitude and just mean-spirited, you know. So people are so concerned about the prosecutor's office, but that is a good office. The deputies in there are very good. They work extremely hard. People don't know, but they don't get paid a lot of money. You don't become a prosecuting attorney to make a lot of money. You're
definitely not the rich lawyers there.
You do it to help the community, to help victims get through really terrible things in their lives. So to be a deputy prosecuting attorney is an extremely fulfilling job. You help a lot of people.
But it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
And not too much reward. And sometimes it's a thankless job too, right?
Yeah. So people don't know that, but I don't see Catherine Kealoha being emulated anytime soon. I know the majority of the deputies in there, and nobody is like Catherine Kealoha.
Everybody's going to be looking out for each other and being like, hey, don't even start that. Look what happened.
And now that this has happened, it's brought awareness to the public, to the people in that office. So people might be more aware.
Good. It's good to hear. You know, I think that's one of the things that, you know, corruption happens. It gets brought to light and it kind of stifles corruption going forward. Hopefully, cross your fingers. That's how it's supposed to work. And hopefully it works out that way this time.
I think it will.
I think it will. All right. Any last words before we jet out of here?
Nope.
Thank you again for coming on. It's been super great and super insightful. Thank you, as always, the great Megan Cow.
Not the great, but thank you.
Short in stature, but great in, what's the quote? I always try to do this. I like throw a quote and I can't remember the freaking end of the quote.
Good things come in small packages.
Okay. Yeah. Firecrackers. Yeah.
Yeah. But mahalo for having me. I'm happy to share.
All right. Thank you so much and good luck going forward. And keep helping people out. It's great. All right. As always, stay happy, Hawaii. You're supposed to throw those shakas too.
Oh.